The spotting scope showed 13 failures. 13 of the Marine Corps' finest snipers, each with multiple confirmed kills in combat, and every single one had missed the target at 4,000 meters. Gunnery Sergeant Kramer stood behind the firing line with his arms crossed, satisfaction evident in his posture. The exercise was designed to be impossible. That was the point. What he did not know was that Corporal Maya Okonkwo had been calculating wind patterns for the past 40 minutes, and she had seen something none of the men had noticed. The morning sun had barely cleared the hills east of Camp Pendleton when the demonstration began. Scout Sniper School's most experienced instructors had gathered to prove a point about the limitations of extreme long-range shooting. The target, a standard silhouette barely visible even through high-powered optics, sat on a ridge so distant it seemed to shimmer in the early heat. Each sniper had been given 3 rounds. Each had failed. Maya stood at the back of the formation, her frame smaller than any of the men around her, watching the wind flags positioned at intervals downrange. They told a story the others were not reading. The flags closest to the firing line indicated a consistent left-to-right wind at approximately 8 miles per hour. But the flags at 1,500 meters showed something different. A swirling pattern that suggested a canyon effect. Wind bouncing off the terrain in ways that would push a bullet unpredictably. And beyond that, at the target location itself, the mirage told her the real secret. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed similar acts of quiet determination in your community. Kramer moved down the line, his voice carrying the particular edge of a man who enjoyed being right. Anyone else want to embarrass themselves? He asked. The question was not really a question. It was a statement of dominance, a reminder that he controlled this range and everything that happened on it. Maya stepped forward. The movement was quiet, no bravado, just a simple step that brought her from the back of the formation to the front. Kramer's expression shifted from satisfaction to something that looked almost like anticipation. He had been waiting for this. Well now, he said, turning to face her fully. Corporal Okonkwo thinks she could do what 13 combat-proven snipers could not. The other Marines shifted, some looking away, others watching with the kind of interest that comes before watching someone fail spectacularly. Maya said nothing. She had learned early in the program that words meant nothing here. Kramer did not care about explanations or justifications. He cared about results, and even then, only when they confirmed what he already believed. She moved to the firing line and dropped into position behind the M40A6, the standard Marine sniper rifle. The weapon was familiar, balanced, an extension of muscle memory built over thousands of rounds fired on her family's ranch in Montana. Her grandfather had taught her to shoot before she could write her own name, taught her that a rifle was just a tool and the real skill was reading what the world was telling you. Kramer leaned down, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. You get 1 round, he said, not 3 like the others. 1. Because I do not believe in wasting ammunition on points already proven. Maya adjusted the scope, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency through the calculations. Elevation for 4,000 meters. Wind correction for the flags she could see and the patterns she had been watching. Coriolis effect at this range. Barometric pressure. Temperature. Each variable clicked into place in her mind like pieces of a puzzle she had been solving since childhood. Her grandfather's dog tags hung beneath her uniform, the metal cool against her skin. He had carried them through Korea, through battles she only knew from the few stories he had been willing to share. When he died 2 years ago, she had enlisted the next week. Not because of some romantic notion about service, but because he had told her once that the Marines had taught him the only thing worth knowing: how to be certain in uncertain conditions. She controlled her breathing, watching the mirage through the scope. The heat distortion showed her what the wind flags could not. At the target location, the wind was not moving left to right like it appeared from the firing line. It was moving right to left, a complete reversal caused by the terrain features she had been studying all morning. Every sniper before her had corrected for a wind that did not exist at the target. Maya adjusted her hold, compensating not for what the indicators said, but for what the mirage revealed. Her finger found the trigger, the pressure familiar and exact. The moment stretched, her heartbeat slowing, the sounds of the range fading until there was only the wind and the target and the distance between them. She fired. The rifle's report echoed across the range. Through the scope, she watched the trace of the round, barely visible, arcing through the morning air. For seconds. At this distance, it took 4 full seconds for the bullet to reach the target. For seconds where everything she had calculated either proved true or proved she had failed. The impact was visible even at 4,000 meters. The silhouette rocked backward, the hit clean and centered. For a moment, the entire range went silent. Then one of the other snipers, a staff sergeant with 3 deployment patches, let out a low whistle. Kramer's face had gone rigid. He moved to the spotting scope, checking the target himself, as if his own eyes could somehow change what had just happened. When he straightened, his expression was not impressed or congratulatory. It was something colder. Equipment malfunction, he said flatly. The scope was improperly calibrated. That shot does not count. Maya rose from the firing position, her movements controlled, giving nothing away. She had expected this. Some part of her had known from the moment she stepped forward that even success would not be accepted. Kramer had made his position clear from her first day in the program. Women did not belong in Scout Sniper School, and he would ensure that reality matched his belief. Master Sergeant Chun, the range master, approached from the tower. He was older than Kramer, quieter, a man who had spent more time teaching than talking. He examined the rifle without speaking, checking the scope mounting, the zero, every technical detail that could have affected the shot. When he finished, he looked at Kramer with an expression that was carefully neutral. The equipment is functioning correctly, Chun said. The shot was legitimate. Kramer's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Instead, he turned to Maya with the kind of smile that held no warmth. Report to my office at 1600 hours, Corporal. We need to discuss your training standards going forward. He walked away, his back straight, leaving the implication hanging in the air like gun smoke. The barracks were quiet at 1530 hours, most of the other candidates still on the range or in classroom instruction. Maya sat on a rack, the dog tags in her palm, running her thumb over the worn metal. The engraving had faded over decades, but she could still make out her grandfather's name. Thomas Okonkwo. Serial number. Blood type. The physical proof that he had been real, that the man who taught her everything about shooting had once been young and uncertain, just like her. She had been 8 when he first put a rifle in her hands. A simple .22, nothing fancy, just a tool for learning. They had walked out to the fence line on the ranch, where he had set up a row of cans at 50 yards. He had not talked about breathing or trigger control or any of the technical elements. Instead, he had told her to watch the grass. The wind will tell you everything, he had said. Learn to listen. It had taken her 3 years to understand what he meant. 3 years of missing shots, of frustration, of slowly beginning to see the patterns in how the grass moved, how the heat rose off the ground, how the world itself was constantly giving information to anyone patient enough to receive it. By the time she was 12, she could read wind better than men twice her age. By 15, she was out hooding everyone at the local range. By 18, she knew the Marines were the only place that would let her use the skills her grandfather had given her. The door to the barracks opened. Lance Corporal Jesse Reyes walked in, his utilities still dusty from the morning on the range. He stopped when he saw her, uncertainty crossing his face. For a moment, Maya thought he would turn around and leave. Instead, he moved to his own rack 2 bunks down and sat. That shot this morning, he said, not looking at her. How did you know the wind was reversed to the target? Maya considered not answering. She had learned that explaining herself to the other Marines rarely changed anything. They either believed she belonged or they did not, and words would not shift that belief. But something in Jesse's voice was different, not challenging, genuinely curious. The mirage, she said. It shows the wind direction at the target location, not just at the firing line. Everyone was correcting for what the flags showed, but the flags were reading wind at our position, not where the bullet needed to be. Jesse nodded slowly, processing this. I never thought to look at it that way. We were taught to trust the flags. The flags are useful, Maya said, but they're not the whole picture. Wind does not move in straight lines, especially over terrain like that. You have to read the environment at every point the bullet travels, not just where you were standing. Who taught you that? Jesse asked. My grandfather. He was a Marine. Cordell. Jesse's eyebrows rose. You ever talk about it? Not much. Maya slipped the dog tags back on her shirt. But he taught me everything about shooting. Just never told me he learned it here. There was a knock at the doorframe. Both of them turned to see a younger Marine, Private First Class Torres, standing in the entrance. He looked nervous, his eyes moving between Maya and Jesse. Finally, he focused on Maya. Corporal Torres said, I was wondering if you had a minute. I have been struggling with my prone position, and I thought, after seeing your shot this morning, maybe you could help me understand what I'm doing wrong. The request surprised her. In 3 months at Scout Sniper School, not a single candidate had asked her for help. Most avoided her entirely, following Kramer's unspoken guidance that she was an outsider who did not belong. The fact that Torres was willing to break that pattern publicly said something about either his desperation or his character. Maya stood. Show me your position. Torres moved to the open floor space and dropped in a prone, settling behind an imaginary rifle. Maya circled him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his left elbow was tucked too tight against his body, the slight cant in his hips that would make recoil management harder. Your elbow, Maya said. Move it out 6 inches. You are creating tension in your shoulder that will pull your shots left. Torres adjusted, his face concentrating. Like this? Further. You want a natural bone support structure, not muscular tension. If you have to use muscle to hold the position, you will fatigue and your shots will drift. Torres shifted again, and Maya saw the moment he found it. The slight relaxation as his skeleton took the weight instead of his muscles. His eyes widened. That feels completely different, he said. It should. Maya knelt beside him. Now bring your right thumb over the top of the grip, not wrapped around like you are holding a pistol. Sniper rifle, you want maximum stability, minimum grip pressure. Torres made the adjustment. Jesse had moved closer, watching the instruction with focused attention. Maya realized he was learning too, filing away the corrections she was making. Where did you learn this? Torres asked. Montana. My grandfather's ranch. We shot every day. Your grandfather sounds like he was a hell of a teacher, Torres said. He was. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she thought about him. He died 2 years ago. I am sorry, Torres said quietly. But he would be proud of that shot this morning. That was something else. Before Maya could respond, the barracks door opened again. This time, it was Gunnery Sergeant Kramer. His eyes swept the room, taking in the 3 of them, the informal instruction session, Torres still in prone position on the floor. His expression hardened. Corporal Okonkwo, Kramer said. My office. Now. Maya stood, her movements controlled. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. As she walked past him into the hallway, she heard Kramer address Torres and Jesse. You two have better things to do than waste time with training that does not meet program standards. Get to chow before you miss it entirely. Kramer's office was small, dominated by a desk covered in training reports and range cards. On the wall behind him hung photographs from his deployments, images of Marines in combat gear, Kramer himself younger and leaner in the center of his squad. The message was clear. This was a man who had earned his position through years of service and combat experience. He sat behind his desk and gestured for Maya to stand at attention in front of it. She locked her heels together, eyes focused on the wall behind him, waiting. 3 months you have been in this program, Kramer said. 3 months, and you have yet to demonstrate that you have what it takes to be a Marine Scout sniper. One lucky shot this morning does not change that fundamental reality. Maya said nothing. Speaking would only give him ammunition. Your physical scores are adequate, Kramer continued. Barely. Your land navigation is acceptable. Your fieldcraft needs work. But those are technical skills that can be taught. What cannot be taught? What you either have or you do not have is the mental fortitude to perform under the extreme stress of combat operations. That shot this morning was performed under controlled conditions. No enemy fire, no time pressure, no stakes beyond your own pride. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. In combat, pride does not matter. Your emotions do not matter. The only thing that matters is mission success and the lives of the Marines depending on you. I have seen nothing in your performance that convinces me you can handle that pressure. Maya kept her gaze fixed, her expression neutral. Every word he said was designed to provoke a reaction, to get her to argue or defend herself or show emotion that he could use against her. She would give him nothing. Starting tomorrow, Kramer said, you will be held to enhanced standards. Every exercise, every evaluation, every training event will require performance one level above the base requirements. If the standard is 70%, you will need 80. If the others need to complete a movement in 30 minutes, you will have 25. This is not punishment. This is ensuring that if you somehow graduate from this program, you will be prepared for the reality of what that designation means. He opened a folder on his desk and began writing. You are dismissed, Corporal. Tomorrow morning, 0500, you will report for additional physical training before the regular program begins. I suggest you get sleep while you can. 0500 came fast. Maya stood in the darkness outside the physical training area, her breath creating small clouds in the cold morning air. The rest of the candidates would not arrive for another hour, but Kramer's enhanced standards meant she started before anyone else. The instructor waiting for her was Staff Sergeant Vega, a compact man with the build of someone who lived in the gym. He looked at her without sympathy. 3-mile run in 22 minutes, he said. Full combat load. Standard is 25 minutes. Your standard is 22. Move out. The pack on her back weighed 40 pounds. The weight distributed poorly enough that it would shift and chafe as she ran. Maya took off at a pace she knew would be difficult to maintain, her boots striking the asphalt in steady rhythm. The route took her through the hills surrounding the base, elevation changes that would burn her legs and lungs. By mile 2, her breathing was labored. By mile 3, her legs felt like concrete. She crossed the finish line at 21 minutes and 40 seconds. Vega checked his watch and nodded. Acceptable. 50 pull-ups. Standard is 20. Your standard is 50. Begin. Maya moved to the bar, her arms already fatigued from the run. She pulled herself up, chin clearing the bar, then lowered with control. The first 20 were manageable. By 30, her muscles were screaming. At 40, she had a pause between reps, hanging from the bar while her forearms burned. She finished number 50 and dropped to the ground, her hands shaking. 200 sit-ups, Vegas said. Standard is 100. Your standard is 200. Begin. The session continued for 90 minutes. Every exercise doubled the normal requirement. By the time the other candidates began arriving for regular morning PT, Maya was drenched in sweat, her muscles trembling with exhaustion. Jesse saw her, and his expression shifted to something between concern and anger. He understood what was happening. The rest of the day followed the same pattern. During marksmanship training, the other candidates engaged targets at 600 meters. Maya was sent to the 1,000-meter range alone. During stalking exercises, the others had 4 hours to reach their final firing position. Maya was given 2.5. During classroom instruction on ballistics, she was tested on material the others would not see for another week. By 1,800 hours, when the training day officially ended, Maya moved like someone who had been in a firefight. Everything hurt. Her hands were raw from rope climbs. Her shoulders ached from the extra pack weight during the ruck march. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep and the intensity of concentration required to meet impossible standards. She sat in the chow hall, forcing herself to eat even though exhaustion had killed her appetite. Jesse slid into the seat across from her, his tray loaded with food. He waited until she looked up. This is not right, he said quietly. What Kramer is doing to you is not about making you better. It is about breaking you. Maya took a drink of water, buying time to consider her response. Maybe that is the point. Maybe if I can handle this, I can handle anything. Jesse shook his head. The standards exist for a reason. They're designed to prepare us for combat operations, not to destroy someone before they ever get the chance to prove themselves. Every Marine in this program is being pushed to their limit. You are being pushed beyond yours. Then I will expand my limits, Maya said. A shadow fell across the table. Both of them looked up to see Master Sergeant Chun standing there, his expression unreadable. He did not sit, did not make small talk. He simply looked at Maya with the kind of assessment that came from decades of evaluating Marines. Corporal Okonkwo, Chun said, "Walk with me." Maya stood, her legs protesting the movement. She followed Chun out of the chow hall and into the cooling evening air. He led her away from the barracks, toward the range complex, not speaking until they were well away from anyone who might overhear. "I knew your grandfather," Chun said. The word stopped Maya completely. She stared at Chun, searching his face for any sign of deception or manipulation. He met her gaze steadily. "Thomas Okonkwo," Chun continued. "Korea, 1952. We were in the same platoon for 8 months. He was the best natural shooter I ever saw. Better than anyone I have trained in 30 years of teaching Marines how to kill at distance." Maya found her voice. "He never mentioned you. He never mentioned anyone from the Corps." Chun nodded. "That sounds like Tom. He did not talk about the war much. What he did talk about was wind. He could read it like other men read books. Used to drive our spotter crazy because Tom would make adjustments that did not match the data, but the rounds would still find their targets." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Her grandfather's lessons suddenly had context she had never known. The seemingly random observations about grass movement, about heat shimmer, about how birds flew differently in certain wind conditions. All of it had come from here, from this place, from the same training she was receiving now. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. "Because you have a choice to make," Chun said. "Kramer's going to keep pushing. The enhanced standards are just the beginning. He will find new ways to test you, to create situations where failure seems inevitable. You can quit, and no one would blame you. Or you can do what your grandfather did. Adapt, survive, prove that the impossible is only impossible until someone does it." "What did my grandfather do in Korea?" Maya asked. "What made him so good?" Chun looked out toward the dark ranges. "There was an operation late in the war. Our position was getting overrun. Enemy troops moving through a valley, too many of them, coming too fast. Tom was our designated marksman. He took a position on high ground and started shooting. 700 meters, no scope, iron sights only. He dropped 36 enemy combatants in 40 minutes. Saved the entire platoon. They wanted to give him a medal, but he refused. Said he was just doing what needed to be done." Maya absorbed this, understanding for the first time where her abilities had really come from. Not just practice on a ranch. Genetics, legacy, blood. "He taught me everything about shooting," Maya said. "But he never told me he was a Marine sniper." "He was not," Chun said. "We did not have the formal scout sniper program back then. But he should have been. That is why I'm telling you this. You have his gift. I saw it in that shot you made. The way you read the mirage, the wind reversal, the compensation for terrain effects. That is not something that can be taught. That is instinct and you have it." "Then why does Kramer hate me so much?" Maya asked. Chun was quiet for a moment. "Because he is afraid. Afraid that everything he believes about who belongs in this program might be wrong. Afraid that if you succeed, it will change things he does not want changed. Fear makes people cruel." "What should I do?" Maya asked. Chun turned to face her fully. "Tomorrow morning, 0500, you will report for enhanced physical training again. And you will complete every impossible standard Kramer sets. Not because you have to prove anything to him, but because you need to prove it to yourself. Your grandfather faced impossible odds and survived. You come from that. Remember it." He walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the darkness. Above her, stars were beginning to appear in the clear sky. Her grandfather used to tell her that snipers and stars had something in common. Both waited patiently in the dark for the exact right moment to shine. Maya walked back to the barracks, her exhaustion still present, but something else burning underneath it now. Purpose. The knowledge that she was not just fighting for herself, but carrying forward a legacy that had started decades before she was born. Inside the barracks, Jesse looked up from where he sat, cleaning his rifle. "You okay?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Better than okay. Tomorrow I'm going to show Kramer what impossible really means." Jesse grinned. "Need a witness? Because I would pay to see that. Just be ready to learn some new techniques," Maya said. "Because if I'm going to survive this, I'm going to need allies who understand what we are really up against." The surprise evaluation came 3 days later. Maya and the other candidates were in the middle of a land navigation exercise when Kramer appeared on the trail, a thin smile on his face that meant nothing good. He held a clipboard, official-looking papers attached to it. "Training pause," he announced. "All candidates return to the assembly area immediately. We have an unscheduled qualification event." The march back took 20 minutes. Maya could feel the tension among the other Marines. Surprise evaluations were rare and usually meant someone was about to fail. When they reached the assembly area, a full-range setup waited for them. Targets at multiple distances, wind flags positioned, spotting scopes on tripods. This was not a simple exercise. This was formal testing. Kramer stood at the front of the formation, his posture radiating authority. "This evaluation will test your ability to perform under pressure with minimal preparation. Each of you will engage targets at 600, 800, and 1,000 meters. You'll have 30 seconds between shots. Failure to hit 2 out of 3 targets results in academic probation." He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Academic probation meant one more failure would result in removal from the program. It was the last step before being dropped. "Corporal Okonkwo," Kramer continued, "will engage different targets. 1,200, 1,500, and 1,800 meters. Same time constraints. Same consequences." The other candidates shifted, several of them glancing at Maya. Jesse's jaw tightened. Even the Marines who had been neutral toward her seemed to recognize the unfairness of the modified test. Targets at 1,800 meters were expert level, the kind of shots that required perfect conditions and extensive preparation. Giving someone 30 seconds between shots at those distances was not testing. It was sabotage. Maya said nothing. She had learned that protesting only gave Kramer ammunition. Instead, she moved to the firing line when her turn came, dropping into position behind the M40A6. Through the scope, the first target at 1,200 meters was visible but small, a dark shape against the hillside. The wind flags showed a quartering wind from the left, approximately 10 miles per hour. She made her adjustments and fired. The round impacted center mass. 30 seconds on the clock. She shifted to the second target at 1,500 meters. The wind had changed, now coming more directly from the left, pushing harder. She compensated and fired. Another hit. 30 seconds. The final target at 1,800 meters sat in a completely different wind environment. The flags near it showed almost no movement, but the mirage told a different story. Updraft from the heated ground, creating a vertical component to the wind that would push the bullet high if she did not account for it. Maya adjusted down half a mil, held for the horizontal drift, and fired. 3 seconds. 4. 5. The impact showed just left of center, still within the kill zone. 3 for 3. She cleared the weapon and stood. Kramer approached, examined the target confirmation from the spotters, and made a notation on his clipboard. His expression gave nothing away. "Acceptable," he said. Then he turned to address the entire formation. "That performance represents the minimum standard for Corporal Okonkwo going forward. Anything less will result in academic probation." The message was clear. Even perfection would barely be good enough. Maya had hit 3 difficult targets under time pressure, and it was dismissed as merely acceptable. Meanwhile, other candidates who missed one of their easier shots received only minor corrections. After the evaluation, as the candidates were securing equipment, Jesse moved close enough to speak quietly. He has been filing reports. I heard him talking to the admin chief. Every negative observation, every time you take longer than standard on an exercise, every minor mistake. He is building a case to drop you from the program. How do you know this? Maya asked. Because Torres works in the admin office part-time. He saw the file. It is 3 times thicker than anyone else's. Maya absorbed this information. Documentation meant Kramer was planning something official, something that would be harder to fight than just training harassment. If he could create a paper trail showing consistent performance issues, he could justify removing her even if she met every standard. Whilst did Torres see? Maya asked. Jesse glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Kramer has been communicating with the command about creating new physical standards specifically for the Scout Sniper program. Standards that would eliminate anyone under a certain height and weight. The numbers he is proposing would disqualify you and probably half the Marines in the Corps. Maya felt anger rising, but pushed it down. Emotion was a luxury she could not afford. Does Master Sergeant Chin know about this? I do not know, but you should tell him. Before Maya could respond, Kramer's voice cut across the range. Corporal Okonkwo, my office. Now, the walk to Kramer's office felt longer than it was. Maya's mind raced through possibilities, trying to anticipate what new challenge he would present. When she entered and stood at attention, Kramer did not sit. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, studying her like she was a problem he was working to solve. Your performance today was adequate, he said. But adequacy is not excellence. In combat, adequate gets Marines killed. I need to know that every sniper graduating from this program can perform at the highest level under the worst conditions. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant, Maya said. Kramer moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. I served 3 tours in Fallujah. I have seen what happens when someone is not prepared for the reality of combat. I have written letters to families explaining why their sons are not coming home. That responsibility weighs on me every single day. He paused, his eyes locked on hers. And I will not graduate a Marine from this program if I have any doubt about their ability to survive and complete the mission. Any doubt at all. I understand, Gunnery Sergeant, Maya said. Do you? Kramer asked. Because from where I stand, you are here to prove a point. To show that women can do everything men can do. That is politics, Corporal. This program is not about politics. It is about preparing warriors for the most demanding role in the Marine Corps. I am not here to prove a point, Maya said, keeping her voice level. I am here because I want to be a Scout Sniper. Because I have the skills, and I want to use them in service of the Corps. Kramer shook his head. Skills can be taught. What cannot be taught is the mentality required to take a human life from 1,000 meters away and then live with that decision. To be alone in enemy territory for days, knowing that if you are discovered, no one is coming to save you. To make the choice between mission success and personal survival. He moved back behind his desk, picking up a folder. I am recommending you for additional psychological evaluation. The Corps has standards for mental resilience, and I want to ensure you meet them before we invest more training resources in your development. Maya's stomach dropped. Psychological evaluation was subjective. It could be used to justify removal even if she met every physical and technical standard. And Kramer would ensure the evaluators knew exactly what conclusions he expected them to reach. You're dismissed, Kramer said. The evaluation is scheduled for 0900 tomorrow. Do not be late. Maya left the office, her mind already working through the implications. A psych eval meant questions about stress tolerance, decision-making under pressure, emotional stability. All things that could be interpreted in ways that supported a predetermined conclusion. If Kramer had already communicated with the evaluators, the outcome might be decided before she ever sat down. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the hills in shades of orange and red. Jesse was waiting near the barracks, Torres beside him. They both looked tense. We heard, Jesse said, about the psych eval. How? Maya asked. The whole program is talking about it. Kramer made sure everyone knew. He wants the other candidates to see what happens when someone does not fit his vision of what a sniper should be. Maya nodded slowly. Then I will give him a vision he cannot dismiss. Tomorrow, I pass that evaluation, and every evaluation after it, because the only way to beat someone who has already decided you should fail is to make failure impossible. The psychological evaluation room was sterile and windowless, designed to be neutral and unthreatening. Maya sat across from Lieutenant Commander Pearson, a naval psychologist with kind eyes and a clipboard full of questions. For 90 minutes, they talked about stress responses, decision-making processes, emotional regulation. Pearson's questions were careful, probing, designed to reveal how Maya handled pressure. "Tell me about a time you failed at something important," Pearson asked. Maya thought about her grandfather's funeral, about enlisting the next week because she could not stand the emptiness of the ranch without him, about how she had failed to tell him before he died that his teaching had given her purpose. "I failed to say goodbye properly to someone I loved," Maya said. "I thought I would have more time." "How did that failure affect you?" Pearson asked. "It taught me that time is not guaranteed, that if something matters, you do it now. You do not wait for perfect conditions." Pearson made notes. "And how does that apply to your role as a Marine?" Maya met her eyes. "It means I do not hesitate when the mission requires action. I do not wait for ideal circumstances. I execute with what I have when I have it." The evaluation continued. Questions about fear, about isolation, about moral decision-making in combat scenarios. Maya answered honestly, knowing that dishonesty would be detected and used against her. When it ended, Pearson closed her folder and studied Maya for a long moment. "You are remarkably self-aware, Corporal, and your stress responses indicate strong resilience. I will have my report completed by end of day." Maya left the evaluation feeling uncertain. She had told the truth, shown her thinking, but Pearson's neutral expression gave no indication of the conclusions she would draw. The waiting would be the hardest part. The rest of the day passed in a blur of training that felt hollow. Maya went through the motions during land navigation, during equipment maintenance, during the evening brief. Her mind kept circling back to the evaluation, to Kramer's file of negative reports, to the growing sense that no matter how well she performed, the outcome had already been decided. That evening, she skipped chow and went to the range alone. The setting sun cast long shadows across the targets. She sat at the 1,000-meter line, not shooting, just watching the wind flags move in the cooling air. Her grandfather had taught her that stillness was its own form of action, that sometimes the best thing a sniper could do was wait and observe. The sound of boots on gravel made her turn. Master Sergeant Chen approached, moving with the careful economy of someone who had spent decades in the Corps. He sat beside her without asking permission, his eyes following hers to the distant targets. "Pearson sent me her preliminary findings," Chen said. Maya's stomach tightened. "That was fast. She works efficiently." Chen pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Her assessment is that you demonstrate exceptional psychological resilience, strong ethical reasoning, and the emotional stability required for high-stress roles. She recommends you continue in the program without restriction." Relief flooded through Maya, so intense it almost hurt. She had passed. The evaluation that was supposed to end her career had instead validated her. "Kramer is not going to accept this," Maya said. Chen nodded. "No. He has already requested a second evaluation by a different psychologist. Claims that Pearson may have been biased by your gender, that she was too sympathetic." Maya felt the relief drain away. "So it does not matter what the evaluation says. He will just keep requesting new ones until he gets the result he wants." "Not exactly." Chen unfolded the paper. Pearson anticipated this. Her report includes detailed documentation of her methodology, comparison data with other Scout Sniper candidates, and statistical analysis showing your responses are within normal ranges for successful graduates. She also noted that requesting multiple evaluations without cause could constitute harassment. That last part made Maya look at Chen sharply. She put that in an official report? Chen's expression was carefully neutral. Lieutenant Commander Pearson takes her professional obligations seriously. She believes that accurate psychological assessment serves the Corps better than politically motivated outcomes. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now you continue training. Kramer can request additional evaluation, but it will require command approval and justification. And with Pearson's report on file, that justification will be difficult to provide." Maya absorbed this, feeling something shift. For the first time since arriving at Scout Sniper School, she had won a round against Kramer, not through physical performance or shooting skill, but through the integrity of someone who refused to let the evaluation be manipulated. "Thank you," Maya said, "for whatever you did to make sure Pearson conducted a fair assessment." Chun stood, brushing dust from his utilities. "I did nothing except ensure she had access to all relevant information, including your performance record and the context of why the evaluation was requested. The rest was her professional judgment." He started to walk away, then paused. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, not because you are succeeding, but because you're not letting them make you smaller." Tom never bent for anyone, drove his officers crazy sometimes, but they respected him because he was always right about the shot. After Chen left, Maya sat alone as darkness fell completely. The base lights came on, illuminating the ranges in harsh artificial white. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear Marines calling cadence during an evening run. The sounds of the Corps at work, preparing warriors for a world that did not care about fair or unfair, only about mission success. She pulled out her grandfather's dog tags, running her thumb over the worn metal. In her mind, she could see him on the ranch, patient and steady, teaching her to read the grass. He had never told her the Marines would be easy. He had never promised that her skill would be enough. What he had taught her was simpler and harder, that the only person who could make you quit was yourself. The next morning, Kramer gathered the candidates for the training brief. His expression was tight, controlled, anger barely contained. Maya could tell he had heard about Pearson's report and the implicit rebuke it contained. "This week," he announced, "we move into field operations. You will be conducting 3-day stalking exercises in the wilderness training area. Teams of 2. You will infiltrate to designated positions, establish hides, and engage targets of opportunity while avoiding detection by our hunter force." He paused, his eyes moving across the formation until they found Maya. "Corporal Okonkwo will operate solo. No partner. Same mission requirements, same timeline, same performance standards." The unfairness was blatant now. Operating solo meant no one to provide security while she slept, no one to share observation duties, no one to help carry equipment. It meant constant vigilance for 72 hours straight, a physical and mental challenge that even experienced snipers found difficult. Jesse started to raise his hand, clearly about to protest, but Maya caught his eye and gave a slight shake of her head. Protesting would only make it worse. Kramer wanted a reaction, wanted her to complain so he could add insubordination to his growing file of justifications. "Corporal Reyes," Kramer said, noticing the aborted gesture. "You have a question?" Jesse lowered his hand. "No, Gane Sergeant." "Good." Kramer turned back to the formation. "You deploy at 0400 tomorrow. Review your equipment lists, conduct final inspections, and ensure your camouflage is appropriate for the terrain. This exercise will determine who has the field craft to operate independently in hostile territory. Failure is not an option." After the brief, as the candidates dispersed to prepare, Torres approached Maya with Jesse. His expression was troubled. "This is wrong," Torres said quietly. "Even experienced 2-man teams struggle with the 72-hour stalk. Doing it solo is nearly impossible." "Nearly," Maya said. "Not completely. You need sleep," Jesse said. "You cannot stay alert for 3 straight days. Your performance will degrade, and Kramer will use that as evidence you do not have the stamina for the role." Maya shouldered her pack, testing the weight distribution. "Then I will sleep in shifts. 30-minute intervals, enough to prevent total exhaustion, but not long enough to be caught unaware." "That is not real sleep," Torres said. "You will be hallucinating by day 3. "Maybe," Maya acknowledged. "Or maybe I will discover I am more resilient than anyone expects, including myself." She walked away before they could argue further, heading toward the supply room to gather camouflage materials. The challenge Kramer had set was designed to break her. 72 hours alone, hunted, exhausted, with no margin for error. He expected her to fail, to quit, to prove his belief that she did not belong. But as Maya began preparing her gear, checking every piece of equipment with methodical care, she felt something unexpected. Not fear, not doubt, anticipation. This was the test that would prove everything. Not to Kramer or the Corps or anyone else. To herself. Hour 56 of the 72-hour stalk. Maya lay motionless in her hide, a carefully constructed burrow of vegetation and netting that made her invisible from more than 10 feet away. Her body ached from maintaining position. Her eyes burned from lack of real sleep. The 30-minute rest intervals had kept her functional, but not sharp. Hunger gnawed at her despite the energy bar she had rationed throughout the exercise. Through her scope, she observed the hunter force moving below her position. For Marines in full combat gear, searching the hillside with thermal optics and trained eyes. They had nearly found her twice already. Once on the first night, when she had to remain frozen for 6 hours as they set up an observation post 30 meters from her hide. Again on the second day, when one of them walked within 5 feet of her position, his boot crushing the vegetation she had carefully arranged. But they had not seen her. And now, with 16 hours remaining, she was close to completing what Kramer had designed to be impossible. The radio in her ear crackled. All hunter elements, this is control. Target of opportunity inbound to Sector 7. High-value individual. Engagement is authorized if you have positive identification. Maya shifted slightly, the first significant movement she had allowed herself in 4 hours. Sector 7 was 200 meters east of her current position. If she moved now, she could reach a vantage point that would give her a clear shot. But movement meant risk. The hunter force was still active in the area, and any noise or disturbance would draw them directly to her location. She calculated rapidly. The target of opportunity was the final element of the exercise, the shot that would prove she could operate independently and complete the mission despite the impossible conditions. But attempting it while hunter force was this close was exactly the kind of decision that could end in failure. Maya made her choice. She began to move, inching backward out of her hide with glacial slowness. Every shift of her body was measured in minutes. Every placement of her hand verified before she committed weight to it. The 200 meters to the new position took her 90 minutes to traverse. By the time she reached the vantage point and began constructing a hasty hide, her muscles screamed and her hands shook from the sustained tension. Through the scope, she saw the target emerge. Master Sergeant Shun, playing the role of high-value enemy commander, moving through the valley with 2 escorts. The range was 1,100 meters, a difficult but manageable shot in normal conditions. But Maya's body was not in normal condition. Her breathing was irregular from exhaustion. Her hands trembled slightly from sustained stress and insufficient food. The margin for error was razor thin. She forced herself to slow down, to find the calm center her grandfather had taught her existed even in chaos. The wind was quartering from the right, 8 miles per hour at her position, but the flags downrange showed variation. She calculated, adjusted, recalculated. Shun moved with deliberate slowness, making himself an easier target for the exercise, but also testing whether she would take a shot that was not perfect. Maya settled her breathing, found the natural pause between heartbeats, and pressed the trigger. The round flew true, impacting the target's silhouette Shin carried. Through the scope, she saw him stop and examine the hit, then key his radio. From her position, she could not hear what he said, but she knew the shot had been recorded. Mission complete. Now came the hardest part. Extraction while the hunter force converged on her firing position. The sound of the shot had given them a direction. They would be moving toward her already, setting up a cordon to trap her. Maya broke down her hasty position with controlled speed, erasing evidence of her presence, then began moving perpendicular to the expected line of approach. She covered 300 meters in 20 minutes, then went to ground in a depression behind a fallen tree. The hunter force moved past her position, focused on the area where she had fired from. She waited, counting seconds, fighting the exhaustion that made her want to close her eyes and rest. When the coast was clear, she continued her movement, navigating by memory and terrain features toward the extraction point 5 kilometers away. The last hour was the hardest. Every step felt like moving through concrete. Twice she nearly stumbled, catching herself at the last second. Her vision had started to blur at the edges, the first sign of serious sleep deprivation. But she pushed through, driven by something deeper than physical endurance, by the knowledge that her grandfather had done harder things in worse conditions, by the determination not to give Kramer the satisfaction of seeing her fail. She reached the extraction point with 14 minutes to spare. The evaluators were waiting, Kramer among them. His expression when he saw her emerge from the tree line was complex. Surprise that she had made it, frustration that she had succeeded, and something else, harder to read, possibly respect, though he would never admit it. Corporal Okonkwo, the senior evaluator, said, "Report your mission status." Maya stood at attention despite her exhaustion. "Mission complete, sir. Target engaged at 1,100 meters. Confirmed hit. Hunter force evaded during extraction. Zero compromise of position during 72-hour operational period." The evaluator checked his tablet. "The shot is confirmed. Your hide locations were never detected by the Hunter force. Extraction was successful." His expression softened slightly. "Well done, Corporal. That was exceptional fieldcraft under extremely challenging conditions." Kramer said nothing, but Maya saw him make a notation on his clipboard. Another entry in the file he was building, though this time he could not classify it as failure. After the debrief, Maya was released to return to barracks for rest. Jesse and Torres were waiting outside, having completed their own exercise hours earlier. Jesse took one look at her and grabbed her pack before she could protest. "You look like hell," he said. "I feel worse," Maya admitted. Torres handed her a water bottle. "The word around the evaluators is that you just completed the most successful solo 72-hour stalk in the program's history. No one has ever done it without being detected at least once." Maya drank deeply, the cold water shocking her system back to alertness. "I had good motivation not to fail." They walked back to the barracks together, Jesse and Torres flanking her like an honor guard. Other candidates saw them coming and stepped aside, their expressions ranging from respect to envy to disbelief. Maya had done what most of them considered impossible, and everyone knew it. Inside the barracks, Maya collapsed on her rack. Sleep pulled at her immediately, but before she surrendered to it, she heard voices outside. Jesse and Torres talking to someone. A moment later, Master Sergeant Chun appeared in the doorway. "Corporal," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you." Maya forced herself upright, swaying slightly. "Yes, Master Sergeant." Chun approached, his expression serious. "That shot you made, 1,100 meters, after 56 hours without real sleep, under pursuit pressure. Do you know what the success rate is for that scenario?" "No, Master Sergeant. 0. Chun, let that sink in. We have run this exercise for 8 years. No one has ever successfully engaged the target of opportunity after the full 72-hour period. Most candidates are too exhausted to even attempt a shot. Those who try miss by significant margins." "I got lucky with the wind," Maya said. Chun shook his head. "That was not luck. I watched the footage from your hide. You spent 4 hours observing the wind patterns in that valley before the target appeared. You were prepared because you never stopped working, even when you could have rested." He pulled something from his pocket. "Your grandfather had a saying. I heard him use it during Korea when things got difficult. He would say that the difference between good snipers and great ones was not talent. It was refusal to accept that anything was impossible." What Chun held was a photograph, old and faded. It showed a young Marine in Korea-era utilities, holding a rifle, standing next to a much younger Chun. Maya recognized her grandfather's face, decades younger, but unmistakably him. "He wanted you to have this," Chun said. "He gave it to me before he died, told me that if I ever met a young Marine with his gift for reading wind, I should pass it along. He knew you would enlist. He knew you would end up here." Maya took the photograph with trembling hands. Her grandfather had known, had planned for this moment, had trusted Chun to recognize her and guide her when the time came. He also asked me to tell you something, Chun continued. He said that the hardest targets to hit are not the distant ones. They're the ones where everyone tells you the shot is impossible. Because the real battle is not against distance or wind or time. It is against the voice in your head that says you should quit. Maya looked at the photograph, at her grandfather's young face, and felt something break open in her chest. Not weakness, strength. The understanding that she had never been alone in this fight. That every impossible standard she had met, every challenge she had overcome, was built on a foundation laid decades before by a man who had faced his own impossible challenges and refused to quit. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Chun nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. The final qualification exercise is in 2 weeks. Kramer has been planning something. I do not know what, but he has been requesting special equipment and making arrangements with the command. Whatever he has in mind, it will be designed to be your breaking point. I understand, Maya said. After he left, Maya lay back down, the photograph clutched in her hand. Sleep came quickly this time, deep and dreamless. And in that sleep, somewhere in the space between exhaustion and peace, she could almost hear her grandfather's voice. Steady, patient, telling her to watch the grass, to read the wind, to trust what the world was showing her. The impossible he had taught her was just another word for not yet done. The 2 weeks before final qualification passed with an intensity that made the previous training seem gentle. Kramer pushed every candidate harder, but Maya noticed his focus had shifted. He no longer singled her out with obviously unfair standards. Instead, he watched her with the careful attention of someone studying a problem he had not yet solved. Jesse noticed it too. He is planning something big, he said one evening as they cleaned rifles in the armory. Torres heard him requesting authorization for live fire exercises at extended ranges. Distances we have not trained for. How extended, Maya asked. Torres said he heard 4,000 meters mentioned. Maybe more. Maya continued working the bore brush through her rifle barrel, processing this information. 4,000 meters was the distance of her first impossible shot, the one that had started everything. If Kramer was building the final qualification around that distance, he was creating a scenario where her success could be dismissed as luck while failure would prove his point about her limitations. The training during those 2 weeks took on a different character. Less about harassment, more about preparation for something specific. The candidates ran longer distances with heavier packs. They spent hours on the range, engaging targets at progressively greater distances. They studied advanced ballistics, atmospheric effects on bullet trajectory, the mathematical complexity of extreme long-range shooting. And through it all, Maya felt herself changing. The Marine who had arrived at Scout Sniper School 3 months ago had been skilled but uncertain, carrying her grandfather's legacy without fully understanding its weight. Now she moved with a confidence that came not from arrogance, but from proven capability. She had survived everything Kramer had thrown at her. She had completed missions designed to break her. She had earned her place, whether he acknowledged it or not. On the Thursday before final qualification, Master Sergeant Chun called her to the range office. When she arrived, he had topographical maps spread across the table, marking distances and elevation changes with careful precision. The final qualification will be conducted at a location 30 miles from here, Chun said. Remote desert terrain, minimal vegetation, extreme heat. You will engage targets at ranges from 1,000 to 5,000 meters. 5,000, Maya repeated. That is beyond anything we have trained for. Chun nodded. It is also beyond anything most snipers will ever attempt in combat. But Kramer has convinced the command that this program should produce Marines capable of performing at the absolute limits of the weapon system and human ability. He looked at her directly. You understand what this means. If you succeed, you prove something that no one in this program has proven before. If you fail, Kramer will use it as evidence that the enhanced standards were justified all along. Maya studied the maps, calculating wind effects across the desert terrain, temperature variations, the mirage that would be intense in that environment. 5,000 meters, nearly 3 miles. At that distance, the bullet would be in flight for 6 to 7 seconds. Gravity would pull it down over 50 feet. Wind drift could push it yards off target. The curvature of the Earth would affect the trajectory. Can it be done? Maya asked. Chen was quiet for a moment. Your grandfather made a shot at 3,900 meters in Korea. No scope, iron sights only in Mountain Wind. The North Koreans had set up a command post they thought was out of range. Tom proved them wrong. Saved a lot of lives that day. Maya felt the weight of that legacy settling on her shoulders. Not as burden, but as possibility. If her grandfather could do the impossible with inferior equipment under combat stress, she could do it with modern tools and proper preparation. I will need to understand the environmental conditions exactly, Maya said. Temperature at different times of day, wind patterns, humidity variations. Chun slid a folder across the table. I conducted a reconnaissance of the location yesterday. This contains everything you need to know about the terrain and typical conditions. Study it, but do not let anyone see you have it. Officially, all candidates are supposed to receive the location information at the same time. Why are you helping me? Maya asked. Chen's expression softened slightly. Because your grandfather asked me to, and because I have spent 30 years training Marines, and I recognize when someone has the gift. You do not just shoot well, Corporal. You understand a shot in a way that cannot be taught. That is rare, and the Corps needs it. That evening, Maya spread Chen's reconnaissance notes across her bunk, memorizing every detail. The firing position would be on a ridgeline with minimal cover. The targets would be in a valley below. Heat shimmer would be severe between 1,000 and 1,600 hours. The prevailing wind came from the northwest at 12 to 18 miles per hour, but the valley created eddies and reversals. Jessie sat on the edge of her rack, reading over her shoulder. This is insane. 5,000 meters in desert heat with unpredictable wind. Even with perfect equipment and conditions, the variables are too complex. That is the point, Maya said. Kramer wants a scenario where failure is statistically likely, where even if I have the skill, chance can work against me. So what do you do? Jessie asked. Maya looked at the notes, at the careful measurements Chan had made, at the reality of what she would face. I prepare for everything I can control. And then I trust my training for everything I cannot. Torres appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. You need to hear this. I just came from the admin office. Kramer has invited observers to the final qualification. Officers from the command, instructors from other schools, even some press. He is making this a public event. Maya absorbed this new information. Kramer was raising the stakes beyond just her individual success or failure. He was creating a spectacle, ensuring that her performance would be witnessed and judged by people beyond the program. If she failed publicly, it would validate his position that women could not meet Scout sniper standards. If she succeeded, it would be undeniable. How many observers? Maya asked. Torres shook his head. I saw the list. At least 50 people. Maybe more. This is not a normal qualification. This is Kramer making a statement. Jessie's hands clenched into fists. He is setting you up to fail in front of everyone. Even if you make shots that other candidates miss, he will find a way to spin it as inadequate. Maya stood and began organizing her gear for the next day's final preparation. Then I will not give him anything to spin. I will make every shot. Not adequately. Perfectly. The confidence in her voice surprised even herself, but it came from a place deeper than bravado. She had been tested in every way possible over the past 3 months. She had met impossible standards, survived impossible conditions, completed impossible missions. Tomorrow would be one more impossibility to overcome. That night, Maya could not sleep. She lay in her rack, holding the photograph Chan had given her, studying her grandfather's young face. What had he been thinking in that moment, standing in Korea with his rifle, knowing that people were counting on him? Had he felt the same mixture of determination and fear she felt now? At 0300, she gave up on sleep and went to the range. The stars were brilliant in the clear desert sky, uncountable points of light that had guided navigators for millennia. Maya sat on the shooting line, feeling the cool night air, letting her mind settle into the quiet place where doubt could not reach. Master Sergeant Chen found her there at 0400, 2 thermoses of coffee in his hands. He sat beside her without speaking, offering her one of the thermoses. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the eastern horizon begin to lighten with the promise of dawn. Your grandfather used to do this, Chen said finally. Before difficult operations, he would find a quiet place and just sit. Let his mind process everything without forcing it. He called it preloading the shot, getting mentally ready before the physical action began. Maya nodded. He taught me that on the ranch. Said that the best shots were made before you ever touched the rifle. Chen smiled. That sounds like Tom. He understood that shooting was 90% mental and 10% physical. The mechanics were easy. The hard part was maintaining absolute certainty when everything around you is uncertain. The sky continued to brighten, stars fading as dawn approached. In a few hours, Maya would face the final test. 50 witnesses would watch her attempt shots that pushed the boundaries of human capability and weapon technology. Kramer would be waiting for her to fail. The other candidates would be judging whether she truly belonged. But sitting there in the pre-dawn darkness with Chun, drinking coffee and watching the world wake up, Maya felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because she knew she would succeed, but because she knew she had already proven everything that mattered. To herself, to her grandfather's memory, to the legacy she carried. Whatever happened in the final qualification, she had already won the only battle that truly counted. The one against the voice that said she did not belong. The convoy arrived at the remote desert location at 0700. Maya stepped out of the transport vehicle and immediately felt the heat beginning to build despite the early hour. By noon, the temperature would exceed 110 degrees. The mirage would be severe, making accurate shooting at extreme distances nearly impossible. Kramer stood at the firing line, surrounded by the observers he had invited. Maya recognized officers from the base command, instructors from other Marine training schools, and 2 civilians with cameras who appeared to be military journalists. Exactly as Torres had warned, this was not just a qualification. It was a public demonstration. The other candidates assembled in formation. 12 Marines who had survived the same brutal program, each of them skilled and proven. Jesse caught her eye and gave a slight nod of encouragement. Torres stood at attention, but his expression was tense, knowing what was about to unfold. Kramer called the formation to attention and began his brief. Today's final qualification will test your ability to engage targets at extended ranges under adverse environmental conditions. Each candidate will engage targets at 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 meters. Passing requires hits on at least 4 of the 5 targets. He paused, his eyes finding Maya. Corporal Okonkwo will engage an additional target at 5,000 meters. This target is voluntary, but will demonstrate the absolute peak capability of a scout sniper operating at the limits of the weapon system. Voluntary. The word was carefully chosen. By making it optional, Kramer created a scenario where refusing would seem like an admission of limitation, but attempting it risked public failure. Maya understood the trap perfectly. She also understood that she had no choice but to spring it. The first candidate moved to the firing line. Staff Sergeant Martinez, a combat veteran with 2 deployment patches and a reputation as one of the program's strongest shooters. He engaged the targets methodically, his shots precise and controlled. At 1,000 meters, a clean hit. 1,500, another hit. 2,000, the round impacted slightly left but within the kill zone. 3,000 meters, he missed by 2 feet. For 1,000 meters, another miss. Martinez secured his weapon and stood, his expression frustrated but accepting. 3 out of 5 was a passing score, but not the performance he had wanted. The observers made notes. 2 more candidates went through the same sequence. Both passed with 3 hits, both missing the targets beyond 3,000 meters. The difficulty was evident. Wind at those distances became unpredictable. Heat mirage distorted the view through the scope, and the mathematical complexity of the calculations overwhelmed even experienced shooters. Jesse's turn came. He moved to the firing line with focused intensity, his movements economical and precise. Maya had spent hours helping him refine his wind-reading technique, and it showed. He hit the first 4 targets cleanly, his adjustments perfect for each range. At 4,000 meters, he took extra time, reading the mirage carefully. His shot impacted high and right, missing the kill zone by inches. He secured the weapon and stood, catching Maya's eye. His expression said what he could not speak aloud. "I did my best. Now show them what you can do." "Corporal Okonkwo," Kramer called. "The firing line is yours." Maya moved forward, her rifle balanced in her hands, each step measured and calm. She could feel 50 sets of eyes watching her, judging her, waiting to see if the female Marine who had caused so much controversy could actually perform when it mattered most. She set those thoughts aside. The only opinions that mattered were her grandfather's and her own, and one of those voices was permanently silent. She dropped into position behind the M40A6, the weapon familiar and balanced. The first target at 1,000 meters was almost routine after months of training. She calculated, adjusted, fired. Clean hit. The observers murmured. 1,500 meters, another hit. 2,000, the wind had shifted slightly, but she compensated. Hit. 3,000 meters. This was where most candidates began to struggle. Maya took her time, watching the mirage patterns downrange, reading the multiple wind zones between her position and the target. She saw what others had missed. The heat rising from the desert floor created a vertical column that would push the round high if she did not account for it. She adjusted down, calculated the horizontal drift, and fired. The round flew true. For seconds in flight. Impact cinemass. The observers' murmuring grew louder. For 1,000 meters. The distance of her first impossible shot, the one that had started this entire journey. Through the scope, the target seemed impossibly small, a dark shape against the lighter desert beyond. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the wind on her face, remembering her grandfather's teaching. The wind will tell you everything. Learn to listen. She opened her eyes and looked through the scope again, not at the target but at the air itself. The mirage showed her the pattern. Wind from the northwest at 15 miles per hour at her position, but creating eddy currents in the valley that would push the round left, then right, then left again. She calculated the cumulative effect, the way the bullet would drift through each wind zone, arriving at the target from an angle that would require compensation. Maya made her adjustments and fired. 6 seconds, the longest she had ever waited for a round to reach its target. Impact. Another clean hit. 5 for 5. The observers were no longer murmuring. They were silent, watching with the kind of attention that came from witnessing something exceptional. Kramer's expression was unreadable, but Maya saw his jaw tighten. She cleared the weapon and stood, but did not move from the firing line. The voluntary target at 5,000 meters waited. She could walk away now with a perfect score, having proven everything that was required. Or she could attempt the impossible, risk public failure for the chance to prove something greater. Maya looked toward the observation area and found Master Sergeant Shun. He stood slightly apart from the other observers, his expression calm and knowing. He gave the smallest nod, a gesture so subtle that anyone not watching for it would have missed it. But Maya saw it, and she understood. This was the moment her grandfather had prepared her for, the moment when she could choose safety or significance. She turned back to Kramer. "I am ready for the 5,000-meter target, Gunnery Sergeant." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Corporal, you have already achieved a perfect score on the required targets. The 5,000-meter engagement is exceptionally difficult. Failure will not affect your passing status, but it will be recorded and observed." "I understand, Gunnery Sergeant. I am ready to proceed." Kramer gestured to the range safety officer, who confirmed the extended range was clear. The target at 5,000 meters was barely visible even through high-powered optics, a silhouette that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence in the brutal heat. Maya dropped back into position, settling into the rifle like it was an extension of her body. 5,000 meters, nearly 3 miles. The round would drop over 70 feet due to gravity. Wind drift could push it yards off course. The Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation would influence the trajectory. Temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, all of it mattered at this distance. One miscalculation and the shot would miss by meters. Maya began her process, methodical and complete. She calculated elevation, windage, all the environmental factors that would affect the bullet's flight. But then she did something the others had not done. She stopped calculating and started feeling. She watched the grass move near the target, read the subtle patterns in the heat shimmer, observed the way dust devils formed and dissipated in the valley. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. The wind will tell you everything. And it did. The wind spoke to her in a language she had spent her entire life learning. It showed her the invisible rivers of air the bullet would travel through, the currents and eddies and flows that would push and pull it around during its 6-second flight. She saw the path the bullet needed to take, not through mathematics, but through understanding. Maya made her final adjustments. The scope was dialed to its maximum elevation. Her hold was offset to compensate for drift that would vary across the entire distance. She controlled her breathing, found the space between heartbeats, and pressed the trigger. The rifle recoiled. The round left the barrel at nearly 3,000 feet per second. Maya stayed in position, watching through the scope, counting seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Impact. The target rocked backward, the hit clean and centered. For a moment, absolute silence blanketed the observation area. Then one of the officers began clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire group of observers was applauding, a sound rarely heard on military ranges. Maya cleared the weapon and stood. She did not smile or celebrate. She simply secured her rifle and turned to face Kramer, waiting for his assessment. His expression had shifted to something she had not seen before. Not quite respect, but acknowledgement. The recognition that what he had just witnessed was not luck or chance, but skill at a level that transcended his expectations. Gunnery Sergeant Kramer stepped forward, his voice carrying across the range. Corporal Okonkwo has achieved hits on all required targets, plus the voluntary extended range target. This performance represents the highest qualification score in the history of this program. The applause continued for another moment before Kramer raised his hand for silence. The observers quieted, but Maya could see the shift in their expressions. She was no longer the controversial female candidate whose presence in the program had been questioned. She was the Marine who had just accomplished something none of them had witnessed before. However, Kramer continued, his voice carrying a sharp edge, qualification requires more than marksmanship. It requires judgment under pressure and adherence to proper procedures. Range safety conduct the equipment inspection. The range safety officer approached, a master gunnery sergeant with 30 years of service. He examined Maya's rifle with meticulous care, checking the scope mounting, the barrel, the ammunition. Maya understood what was happening. Kramer was looking for any technical irregularity he could use to invalidate the performance. A loose scope mount, an unauthorized modification, anything. The master gunnery sergeant completed his inspection and turned to Kramer. Equipment is completely within specifications, gunnery sergeant. No irregularities detected. Kramer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then we will review the recorded data from the spotting scopes. Ensure all impacts were accurately recorded. One of the civilian observers stepped forward, a man in his 50s with the bearing of someone who had spent decades in uniform. Excuse me, gunnery sergeant. I am Robert Chun, retired colonel, Marine Corps. I was observing through the primary spotting scope during Corporal Okonkwo's engagement. Every impact was clearly visible and properly recorded. I can personally verify the accuracy of the hits. Maya felt a shock of recognition at the name. Chun, the same surname as Master Sergeant Chun. She glanced toward the range master and saw a slight smile on his face. Robert Chun was his brother, and his presence here was not coincidence. Kramer turned to face the retired colonel. Sir, with respect, I am responsible for maintaining the standards of this program. Thorough verification is required for all qualification events. Colonel Shen nodded. Absolutely, Gunnery Sergeant. And I fully support that verification. However, I should inform you that my reason for attending today was to evaluate whether this program is producing the level of capability that current operational requirements demand. Based on what I just witnessed, I would say you have succeeded beyond expectation. The colonel turned to address the other observers. I spent 28 years as a Marine, including 6 years as a scout sniper and 10 years commanding reconnaissance units. I have seen the best shooters the Corps has produced. That performance by Corporal Okonkwo ranks among the top 3 I have ever witnessed, and it was accomplished under more difficult conditions than the other 2. The weight of his words settled over the observation area. This was not just praise from any observer. This was validation from someone whose opinion carried significant authority in the scout sniper community. Kramer stood silent for a moment, then nodded curtly. Understood, sir. The verification will proceed as standard protocol requires. He turned to Maya. Corporal Okonkwo, you are secured from the firing line. Report to the debrief area with the other candidates. Maya moved toward the debrief area where Jesse and Torres waited with the other successful candidates. As she approached, Jesse broke into a wide grin, and Torres actually laughed with relief. Several of the other Marines who had been neutral or skeptical throughout the program now looked at her with open respect. That was insane, Jesse said quietly. 5,000 meters in this heat. I did not think it was possible. Torres shook his head in disbelief. 13 elite snipers failed at 4,000. You just hit 5. That is not just skill. That is something else. It is what my grandfather taught me, Maya said simply. To read what the world is showing you. Staff Sergeant Martinez approached, the combat veteran who had shot first in the qualification. He extended his hand to Maya. Corporal, that was exceptional shooting. I have been doing this for 8 years, 2 combat deployments, and I have never seen anyone red win like that. Whatever Kramer says or does not say, you earned this. Maya shook his hand, surprised by the gesture. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Martinez glanced toward where Kramer was conferring with the range safety officers. Watch yourself. He is not going to let this go easily. Men like him do not change their minds just because they are proven wrong. They double down. The debrief lasted 2 hours. Each candidate's performance was reviewed in detail, strengths and weaknesses identified, scores recorded officially. When Maya's turn came, Kramer reviewed her targets with clinical precision, noting each impact point, each calculation she had made. His tone was professional but cold. Your marksmanship was acceptable, he said. Your wind reading was adequate for the conditions. Your equipment handling met standards. Acceptable. Adequate. Met standards. The same words he had used months ago when she had made the impossible 4,000-meter shot. Even perfection was being minimized, reduced to bare competence. However, Kramer continued, the psychological evaluation I requested earlier in the program raised some concerns that warrant continued monitoring. While you have passed the technical requirements for graduation, I am recommending a probationary status for your first year of operational assignment. Maya felt anger flash through her, but kept her expression neutral. Probationary status meant constant oversight, limited autonomy, and the implicit message that she was not fully trusted. It was Kramer's final attempt to control the narrative, to ensure that even in success, she was marked as questionable. Before Maya could respond, Colonel Chin's voice came from the back of the debrief room. Gunnery Sergeant Kramer, may I ask what specific concerns from the psychological evaluation warrant probationary status? Kramer turned, clearly not expecting to be challenged. Sir, the evaluation indicated areas where additional monitoring would be prudent given the high-stress nature of scout sniper operations. The colonel pulled out a tablet and scrolled through it. I have Lieutenant Commander Pearson's evaluation here. It states, and I quote, Corporal Okonkwo demonstrates exceptional psychological resilience, strong ethical reasoning, and emotional stability well above average for scout sniper candidates. Recommend continuation without restriction. Could you clarify which concerns you are referencing? The room went silent. Every candidate, every observer, every instructor turned to watch the exchange. Kramer's face had gone rigid. Sir, There were behavioral observations during training that suggested potential issues with adaptability to traditional unit structure. The colonel raised an eyebrow. You mean her willingness to help other candidates with their shooting technique? Or her successful completion of a 72-hour solo stalking exercise that no one else in program history has achieved? Please be specific about which behaviors concern you. Kramer said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Sir, I am exercising my professional judgment as the senior instructor of this program. Colonel Shen Noded Sruli. I understand, Gunnery Sergeant. And, as the former commanding officer of the 1st Marine Division Reconnaissance Battalion, I am exercising my judgment that probationary status is not warranted. I will be communicating that assessment to the appropriate commands. The tension in the room was palpable. This was no longer just about Maya's qualification. It was about authority, about standards, about whether institutional bias would be allowed to override demonstrated performance. Kramer stood at attention. Aye, sir. I will note your assessment in my final report. The colonel's expression softened slightly. Gunnery Sergeant, you have run an exceptional program. These Marines you have trained are among the finest I have seen. Do not let personal disagreement with policy changes diminish that achievement. It was a lifeline, a way for Kramer to save face while backing down from his position. Maya watched his internal struggle play out across his features. Pride fighting against pragmatism. Belief fighting against reality. Finally, Kramer nodded. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your perspective. The debrief concluded shortly after. As the candidates were dismissed, Master Sergeant Chun approached Maya. His expression was calm, but she could see the satisfaction in his eyes. My brother has excellent timing, Chun said quietly. That was not coincidence, Maya said. Chun smiled slightly. Tom asked him to watch out for you, same as he asked me. Robert takes those promises seriously. He has been tracking your progress through the program since day one. Maya felt the full weight of what her grandfather had arranged. He had not just prepared her with skills. He had created a network of support, people who would ensure she had a fair chance when the time came. You really knew I would end up here, Maya said. Chun nodded. He knew you had the gift. And he knew what that gift would mean in an institution that was not always ready for it. So he made sure you would not face it alone. As they walked out of the debrief area into the desert heat, Maya saw Kramer standing alone near his vehicle, staring out at the distant targets. For the first time since she had met him, he looked less like an obstacle and more like what he truly was. A Marine who had dedicated his life to a standard he believed in, now confronting the reality that his definition of that standard was too narrow. She almost felt sympathy for him. Almost. But then she remembered every impossible challenge, every unfair standard, every attempt to break her spirit. The sympathy faded, replaced by something simpler. Understanding without forgiveness. Acknowledgement without acceptance. Kramer had taught her something valuable, even if not what he intended. He had taught her that the hardest battles were not against external enemies, but against the limitations that others tried to impose. And that victory was not changing their minds, but proving those limitations were illusions. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for the following Friday, giving the administrative staff time to process the final qualification results and prepare the official documentation. Maya spent those days in a strange liminal space, no longer a student, but not yet officially graduated. The other candidates treated her differently now, not with the wariness that had marked the first months, but with genuine respect. Jesse and Torres had both passed their qualifications, and the three of them spent the evenings cleaning gear and preparing for their next assignments. The easy camaraderie that had developed between them felt earned, built on shared hardship and mutual support. You know where you're getting assigned? Jesse asked one evening as they organized equipment in the armory. Not yet, Maya said. Master Sergeant Chun said the orders would come through after graduation. Torres looked up from the rifle he was cleaning. I heard from one of the admin clerks that there is a lot of interest in your assignment. Apparently multiple units have requested you specifically. Jesse grinned. Of course they have. Everyone wants a Marine who can make a 5,000-meter shot look easy. It was not easy, Maya said. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. That is what made it so impressive, Torres said. Anyone watching could see how difficult it was. But you made it anyway. The day before graduation, Master Sergeant Chen called Maya to his office. When she arrived, Colonel Chen was there as well, the two brothers standing together in a way that made their family resemblance obvious. Both had the same calm bearing, the same careful way of observing before speaking. Corporal Okonkwo, Colonel Chen said, I want to speak with you before tomorrow's ceremony. There are some things you should know about your assignment and your grandfather's intentions. Maya stood at attention. Yes, sir. At ease, Corporal. This is not an official conversation. He gestured for her to sit. Your grandfather asked me and my brother to watch over your career when he knew his time was short. He was very specific about what he hoped we would help you achieve. The colonel pulled out an old letter, the paper yellowed with age. This is from Tom, written 6 months before he died. He sent it to me with instructions to share it with you only after you completed Scout Sniper School. He was confident you would make it, even when you had not yet enlisted. Maya took the letter with trembling hands. Her grandfather's handwriting, slightly shaky but still recognizable, filled the page. She began to read. Robert, if you are reading this to Maya, it means she did what I knew she would. She has become a scout sniper. I taught her everything I could about reading wind and making the shot, but there are things about being a Marine that I could not teach her. Things she had to learn herself. The hardest part of being exceptional is that people will always try to make you smaller. They will question whether you earned it. They will create impossible standards hoping you will fail. They will tell you that you do not belong, that you should accept less, that you should be grateful for whatever scraps they offer. Do not accept it, Maya. You have a gift that comes along once in a generation. I had it. You have it. And the Corps needs it, whether they know it yet or not. Use that gift fully. Do not let anyone convince you to be less than you are. Tell her that I am proud. Not because she succeeded, but because she refused to quit when quitting would have been easier. That is what makes a Marine. Not the shooting, not the physical ability. The refusal to accept that anything is impossible. Maya finished reading, tears blurring her vision. She wiped them away quickly, not wanting to show weakness, then realized that these men had known her grandfather. They understood. He knew exactly what I would face here, Maya said. Colonel Chen nodded. Tom understood institutional resistance better than most. He faced it himself, though for different reasons. Being that good made people uncomfortable. It challenged their assumptions about what was achievable. Master Sergeant Chen spoke for the first time. Your assignment orders came through this morning. You are being posted to 1st Marine Division, Scout Sniper Platoon. It is one of the most prestigious assignments in the Corps. Colonel Yates specifically requested you after reviewing your qualification performance. Maya absorbed this information. 1st Division was exactly where she wanted to be. Operational assignment with a unit that deployed regularly, where her skills would be used in real-world conditions. There's something else, Colonel Chen said. Your 5,000-meter shot has attracted attention beyond the Marine Corps. The Army Sniper School has requested detailed analysis of your technique. Special Operations Command wants to understand your wind reading methodology. You have become, whether you intended it or not, a symbol of what is possible. I just wanted to be a scout sniper, Maya said quietly. The colonel smiled. I know, but sometimes being excellent at what you do means becoming more than you planned. Your grandfather understood that too. He turned down multiple offers to become an instructor because he wanted to stay operational. But his techniques were still studied and taught. What do I do now, Maya asked. Colonel Chen stood. You graduate tomorrow. You accept your assignment. You continue to be excellent at your job. And you remember that you're not carrying this alone. Tom built a network of people who believe in merit over politics, performance over prejudice. My brother and I are part of that network. So are others you will meet. Use that support when you need it. The graduation ceremony the next morning was held in the base auditorium, a formal affair with families and officers in attendance. Maya stood in formation with the other 11 successful candidates, each of them wearing their dress blue uniforms, prepared to receive the Scout Sniper designation that marked them as among the elite. Gunnery Sergeant Kramer stood at the podium, his expression neutral as he prepared to present each graduate. When he called the first name, Staff Sergeant Martinez, the applause was warm and genuine. Family members cheered. Fellow Marines acknowledged another successful graduate. Each name was called in turn. Jesse stepped forward to receive his designation, his face split by a huge grin. Torres accepted his with quiet dignity. One by one, the candidates who had survived the brutal program were recognized. Finally, Kramer called the last name. Corporal Maya Okonkwo. Maya marched forward, her steps precise, her bearing confident. As she approached the podium, she saw Kramer's expression shift, not to warmth or approval, but to something more complex. Acceptance, perhaps. Recognition that his resistance had failed, that she had proven herself beyond any standard he could create. He pinned the Scout Sniper badge to her uniform, the small emblem that represented months of impossible challenges overcome. For a moment, their eyes met. Kramer's voice was low enough that only she could hear. "You earned this," he said. "I do not have to like how it happened, but I cannot deny that you earned it." Maya nodded once, acknowledging the admission. It was not an apology. It was not friendship, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. As she stepped back into formation, the applause that rose was different from what had greeted the other graduates. It was louder, more sustained. She saw Master Sergeant Chun and Colonel Chun standing together near the back, both of them clapping. Jesse and Torres were grinning like idiots. Even Martinez and some of the other candidates were applauding with genuine enthusiasm. But the moment that struck Maya most powerfully was seeing a group of female Marines standing near the entrance. Young privates and lance corporals, none of them Scout snipers, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from pride to hope to determination. She had not set out to be a symbol, but she understood now that her success meant something beyond her individual achievement. It meant possibility. After the ceremony, as families and friends congratulated the new Scout snipers, Master Sergeant Chun approached Maya one final time. He handed her a small box, worn leather darkened with age. "This belonged to your grandfather," Chun said. "He carried it through Korea. He wanted you to have it when you graduated." Maya opened the box. Inside was a range estimation card, the kind used before modern technology made calculations easier. On the back, in her grandfather's handwriting, was a simple message. "The wind will tell you everything. Trust it. Trust yourself." Maya closed the box carefully, feeling the weight of legacy and expectation and possibility all at once. Her grandfather had known she would be here, had prepared her for this moment through years of patient teaching on a Montana ranch, had built a network to support her when she faced resistance, had believed in her before she believed in herself. Jesse appeared at her shoulder, Torres beside him. So he said, "First Division, when do you report?" 3 weeks, Maya said. "Enough time to take leave and visit home." "Going back to Montana?" Torres asked. Maya nodded. "There's a fence line on the ranch where my grandfather taught me to shoot. I want to go back there, see it one more time as a Scout sniper. Close the circle." Jesse smiled. "You would be proud, you know, what you did here, how you handled it." Maya looked down at the box in her hands, at her grandfather's message. "I know," she said, "and that is what matters most." The flight to Montana took most of a day, changing planes twice before landing in the small regional airport 40 miles from the ranch. Maya rented a truck and drove through familiar countryside, watching the landscape shift from developed areas to open range. The mountains rose in the distance, snow still visible on the highest peaks despite the summer heat. The ranch looked exactly as she remembered. The main house, weathered but solid. The barn where her grandfather had kept his tools and equipment. The fence line stretching toward the horizon, marking the boundary of land that had been in her family for 3 generations. She parked the truck and sat for a moment, letting the memories wash over her. Every fence post held a story. Every section of land represented hours spent learning to read the environment, to understand wind and distance and patience. This place had shaped her long before the Marine Corps refined that shaping into something operational. Maya changed out of her traveling clothes in a ranch wear jeans and boots, and a simple shirt. She pulled her grandfather's rifle from its case, the same .22 he had first put in her hands when she was 8 years old. It felt smaller now, lighter, but the balance was still perfect. She walked the fence line to the spot where he had set up targets all those years ago. The posts that had held tin cans were still there, weathered gray by sun and rain. She could almost see him standing beside her, patient and steady, watching her miss shot after shot until she finally understood what he was teaching. "Watch the grass," he would say. "Tell me what the wind is doing." Maya set up a target at 50 yards, the same distance he had used for her first lessons. She dropped into position, the rifle settling against her shoulder with familiar comfort. Through the scope, the target was clear and sharp. But she did not shoot immediately. Instead, she watched the grass move, read the subtle patterns in how the blades bent and swayed. The wind was coming from the west at about 6 miles per hour, steady and clean. No eddies, no complications. A simple shot that an 80-year-old could make once she understood the principle. Maya adjusted her hold slightly and fired. The round punched through the center of the target. She cleared the rifle and stood, looking out across the land. A voice behind her made her turn. "He always said you had the gift." Maya turned to find Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who had looked after the ranch since her grandfather's death. The older woman smiled, her face lined with years of Montana weather and hard work. "Mrs. Patterson," Maya said, "I did not know you were here. I saw the truck and figured you had come home." Mrs. Patterson walked closer, her eyes kind. "Your grandfather talked about you constantly, especially in those last months. He was so proud that you were going to enlist." "Did he tell you what he wanted me to do?" Maya asked. "Not in so many words, but he made sure certain people knew to watch out for you. Made phone calls, wrote letters. He was building something, making sure you would not be alone in that world." Maya nodded, understanding more fully now the extent of her grandfather's planning. The network of support had not been accidental. It had been deliberately constructed by a man who knew exactly what challenges she would face. "He left something for you," Mrs. Patterson said. "Asked me to keep it safe until you came back as a scout sniper." He was very specific about that timing. She led Maya to the barn, to a workbench where her grandfather had spent countless hours maintaining equipment and preparing ammunition. Mrs. Patterson reached behind a set of shelves and pulled out a wrapped package. The paper yellowed, but intact. Maya opened it carefully. Inside was a logbook, leather-bound and filled with her grandfather's handwriting. She opened to the first page and saw dates from Korea, 50 years in the past. Shot logs, wind readings, calculations, and observations from combat operations. "This is his sniper log," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every shot he made in Korea is documented in there," Mrs. Patterson said. "He wanted you to see it, to understand where you came from." Maya flipped through the pages, seeing her grandfather's careful notations. Distances, conditions, outcomes. And scattered throughout, observations about wind reading that matched exactly what he had taught her on this fence line. He had been passing down not just general principles, but specific techniques developed under combat conditions. One entry near the middle of the book caught her attention. November 18, 1952. Range 1,300 meters. North Korean command post. Wind conditions extreme, multiple zones. Calculated hold based on grass movement and mirage observation. First round impact, mission success. Estimated 35 enemy casualties prevented by elimination of command element. This was the shot Colonel Chin had mentioned. The impossible shot that had saved lives and built a legend. And her grandfather had documented it with the same careful precision he brought to everything. Maya continued reading, page after page of shots made under conditions that would terrify most snipers. And through it all, her grandfather's calm voice coming through in the notes. Observations about staying patient, about trusting the wind, about refusing to accept that anything was impossible. The final entry was dated 3 days before he died. No range notation, no shot details. Just a message. "Maya, if you are reading this, you have become what I always knew you would be. A scout sniper. One of the few who can read what the world is showing and trust that reading absolutely. Remember that the shooting is the easy part. The hard part is believing in yourself when everyone around you says you should not. I believed in you from the moment you first picked up a rifle. Now you must believe in yourself with the same certainty. The wind will tell you everything. Trust it. Trust yourself. Always. Your grandfather, Tom. Maya closed the book carefully, tears running down her face unchecked. Mrs. Patterson put a gentle hand on her shoulder. He knew, the older woman said softly. Somehow he knew exactly when to write that, like he could see the future. Maya shook her head. He did not see the future. He prepared for it. He built something that would carry me through when things got hard. That is different. She stayed at the ranch for 2 weeks, walking the fence line every morning, reading from her grandfather's logbook every evening. She practiced on the same targets he had used, refining techniques he had documented decades before. And slowly, she felt the transformation complete itself, not just from candidate to scout sniper, but from granddaughter carrying a legacy to Marine continuing one. On her last morning before reporting to 1st Division, Maya stood at the fence line one final time. The sun was just rising, painting the mountains in shades of gold and red. The wind moved through the grass in patterns she could read as easily as others read books. Everything her grandfather had taught her was still here, waiting in the land itself. She fired one final shot, a tribute and a farewell. The round flew true, just as he had taught her it would. Then she secured the rifle, packed her gear, and prepared to move forward into the future he had prepared her for. Before leaving, she visited his grave in the small cemetery outside town. The headstone was simple, listing his name and years of service. She placed her scout sniper badge on the stone, leaving it there for a moment before picking it up again. I did it, she said quietly. Everything you prepare me for. Everything you believed I could do. I did it. The wind moved through the cemetery, rustling the grass around the graves. Maya smiled, hearing her grandfather's voice in that sound. The wind will tell you everything. She drove away from the ranch as the sun climbed higher, heading toward California and her new assignment. In the rearview mirror, the mountains gradually disappeared behind her. But she carried them with her now, along with everything else her grandfather had given her. Not just skills or techniques, but something deeper. The absolute certainty that she belonged, that she had earned her place, that no one could take from her what she had proven beyond any doubt. 3 days later, Maya reported to 1st Marine Division headquarters at Camp Pendleton. The scout sniper platoon commander, Captain Wallace, greeted her with a firm handshake and an appraising look. "Corporal Okonkwo," he said, "I have heard a great deal about your qualification performance. 5,000 meters in desert conditions. That is exceptional shooting." "Thank you, sir," Maya said. The captain gestured for her to walk with him. "I am going to be direct with you. There are Marines in this platoon who are skeptical about having a female scout sniper. They have concerns about physical capability, about unit cohesion, about whether standards were lowered to accommodate you." Maya kept her expression neutral. "I understand, sir." "Good, because I do not care about their skepticism. I care about performance. You prove yourself through your work, same as everyone else. No special treatment, no different standards. You hit your targets, you pull your weight, you earn their respect the same way every Marine does. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Maya said. Captain Wallace stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "I read your qualification scores. I read the reports from Gunnery Sergeant Kramer and Master Sergeant Chun. I spoke with Colonel Chun about your capabilities. Based on everything I have seen and heard, I believe you are going to be an exceptional asset to this platoon. But belief is not the same as proof. Show me I am right." "I will, sir," Maya said. He nodded. "Good. Your team leader is Staff Sergeant Morrison. He is one of the best we have. Learn from him. Report to the platoon area at 0700 tomorrow. Welcome to 1st Division, Corporal." As Maya walked toward the barracks that would be her new home, she felt the same anticipation she had felt before the 72-hour stalk. This was another test, another challenge, another opportunity to prove that her grandfather's faith had been justified. But this time, she was not facing it as a question candidate. She was facing it as a Marine Scout sniper who had already proven the impossible was achievable. The journey that had started on a Montana fence line was entering a new phase, and Maya was ready for whatever came next. 6 months into her assignment with 1st Division, Maya crouched in a hide overlooking a training area where her platoon was conducting live fire exercises. Staff Sergeant Morrison lay beside her, observing the same targets through his spotting scope. The partnership that had started with skepticism had evolved into something closer to mutual respect. Morrison had tested her relentlessly in those first months. Longer movements with heavier packs, more complex calculations under time pressure, situations designed to reveal weakness or limitation. Maya had met every challenge, not with complaint, but with quiet competence that eventually wore down his resistance. "Wind is shifting," Morrison said, his voice low. "Quartering from the northeast now, maybe 10 miles per hour." Maya watched the grass move in the valley below, reading the patterns. 12 miles per hour, she said. "And there is an eddy forming near the target area. The terrain is creating a reversal." Morrison adjusted his scope and observed for a long moment. "You are right. How did you see that?" "The grass near the rocks is moving differently than the grass in the open." "Créata signature." Morrison shook his head slightly, a gesture Maya had come to recognize as his version of impressed. 6 months ago, I thought having you in the platoon was going to be a political nightmare. Turns out you read wind better than anyone I have worked with in 12 years. My grandfather taught me, Maya said simply. The training exercise continued below them, other members of the platoon engaging targets at various ranges. Maya had earned her place among them through consistent performance, but she knew the real test would come on deployment. 1st Division was scheduled to rotate overseas in 2 months, and that was when her skills would matter most. After the exercise concluded, the platoon gathered for debrief. Captain Wallace reviewed the performance, noting strengths and areas for improvement. When he finished, he turned his attention to Maya. "Corporal Okonkwo, I received a communication from Marine Corps headquarters yesterday. They are requesting you participate in a sniper instructor development program, teaching the wind reading techniques you use." Maya felt the weight of that request. Teaching meant sharing what her grandfather had given her, translating instinct into something others could learn. It meant potentially becoming what he had refused to be, an instructor rather than an operator. "Sir, with respect, I prefer to remain operational," Maya said. Captain Wallace nodded. "I told them you would say that. I also told them you're too valuable in your current role to pull for instructor duty. But the request is not going away. Your techniques are being studied at the highest levels. Eventually, you'll need to decide how you want that knowledge used." After the debrief, Morrison approached her. "You should consider the instructor position," he said. "What you do, most of us cannot. If you could teach even part of it, you would improve every scout sniper in the Corps." "My grandfather refused those opportunities," Maya said. "He wanted to stay in the fight." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Your grandfather did what was right for him in his time. You need to do what is right for you in yours. They're not the same thing." The word stayed with Maya over the following weeks. She thought about her grandfather's choices, about the logbook filled with shots made but techniques never formally shared. He had influenced people through example and direct teaching, but he had never systematized his knowledge in a way that could spread beyond those he personally trained. Was that the right choice, she wondered? Or was it a limitation of his time, when institutional resistance would have prevented his techniques from being accepted anyway? 2 weeks before deployment, Maya received unexpected visitors. Jesse and Torres, both now assigned to different units, arrived at Camp Pendleton for a joint training exercise. The reunion in the platoon area was warm, the bond forged in Scout Sniper School stronger for having been tested by time and distance. "They look at you differently now," Jesse observed, watching how the other platoon members interacted with Maya. "Like you were one of them." "Took a while," Maya admitted. "But Morrison is a good team leader. He gave me a fair chance to prove myself." Torres grinned. "We heard about your qualification scores here. 98% hit rate at ranges over 1,000 meters. That is insane." "It is what the job requires," Maya said. That evening, The three of them sat outside the barracks, watching the sun set over the Pacific. The easy silence between them spoke to friendship that no longer needed constant words. "I got a letter from Kramer," Jesse said suddenly. "He is retiring next year. Wrote to several of us from the program, talking about legacy and standards." "Did he mention me?" Maya asked. Jesse nodded. "He said that watching you succeed forced him to reconsider assumptions he had held for his entire career. Did not quite apologize, but acknowledged that his approach was wrong." Maya absorbed this, feeling something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but closure. Kramer had been the obstacle she needed to overcome to prove herself. In doing so, she had also changed him, even if only slightly. "People are talking about you," Torres said. "Not just in the Marine Corps. Other services are asking questions about female integration in special operations roles. You opened a door, whether you meant to or not." "I just wanted to be a scout sniper," Maya said. Torres smiled. "That is what makes it matter. You did not do it to make a statement. You did it because you were good enough and you refused to accept anything less than what you earned." The deployment to the Middle East came in late fall. 1st Division Scout Sniper Platoon established operations in a forward base, providing overwatch and precision fire support for ground units, conducting stability operations. The work was demanding, requiring patience and precision under difficult conditions. Maya's first combat shot came 3 weeks into the deployment. A high-value target moving through a compound at 1,300 meters, wind conditions complex, time pressure significant. She made the calculation, trusted her reading, and fired. The impact was clean. Mission success. Morrison, observing through the spotting scope, keyed his radio. Target neutralized. Shooter Okonkwo. Then he turned to her with an expression she had never seen before. Respect mixed with something like awe. "That was textbook perfect, Corporal. Your grandfather will be proud." Over the following months, Maya made 17 more shots in combat conditions, each one documented with the same careful precision her grandfather had used in Korea. She started her own logbook, recording not just the technical details but the lessons learned, the patterns observed, the techniques refined under pressure. And slowly, she began to understand what Morrison had meant about teaching. Her knowledge was not just for her own use. It was a resource that could benefit others, that could save lives beyond the ones she personally impacted through her scope. When the deployment ended and the platoon rotated back to Camp Pendleton, Maya requested a meeting with Captain Wallace. She had made a decision, one that honored her grandfather's legacy while recognizing that her path did not have to be identical to his. "Sir," she said, "about the instructor development program. I would like to participate, but with a condition." Captain Wallace raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead. I want to remain operationally assigned. Teach between deployments, but stay with the platoon. My grandfather chose to remain in the fight, and I want to do the same. But I also want to share what I know in a way that can reach more Marines than I could teach personally." Wallace considered this. "That is not the standard model, but I think I can make it work. The Corps needs operators, and it needs teachers. Maybe you can be both." He extended his hand. "Welcome to the instructor cadre, Corporal Okonkwo. Or should I say Sergeant Okonkwo? Your promotion came through this morning." Maya shook his hand, feeling the weight of the new responsibility and opportunity. She thought about her grandfather, about the fence line in Montana, about the impossible standards she had overcome. All of it had led to this moment, where she could honor his legacy while building her own. That evening, she wrote a letter to Master Sergeant Chun, telling him about her decision. She also wrote to Colonel Chun, thanking him for his support and guidance. And finally, she opened her grandfather's logbook and added her own entry on a blank page at the back. Deployment complete. 18 combat shots, all successful. Beginning instructor duties next month while maintaining operational status. I understand now what you were building, grandfather. Not just a skilled shooter, but someone who could carry the knowledge forward. I will teach others what you taught me. The wind will tell them everything, just as it told us. Trust it. Trust yourself. Always. She closed the logbook and looked out at the California night, stars bright in the clear sky. Somewhere out there, other young Marines were learning to shoot, struggling with wind calls and distance calculations. Some of them would have the gift, the instinctive understanding that could not quite be taught but could be nurtured and refined. And Maya would be there to guide them. The way her grandfather had guided her, the way Chun had supported her, the way Morrison had given her the chance to prove herself. The legacy was not ending. It was expanding, reaching forward into a future her grandfather had prepared for, but would never see. If you enjoyed Maya's journey, drop a comment about your favorite moment, or tell us about someone you know who proved doubters wrong through quiet excellence and refused to accept that anything was impossible. The fence line in Montana still stood, grass moving in patterns that told stories to those who knew how to read them. And 3,000 miles away, a Marine Scout sniper prepared to pass those stories forward, ensuring that the gift would never be lost.